All right, Steve Bannon's in trouble again at a gathering in Florida. The Breitbart firebrand claimed that there's a special room in hell for never Trump Republicans. Then Charles Manson died and reported that no, it's all just one big lake of fire. Bannon has yet to retract his statement. Speaking of special rooms in hell, Michael Knowles will be in this room with us to discuss Thanksgiving. Trigger warning, I'm Andrew Klavan, and this is The Andrew Klavan Show.
I feel hunky-dunky, life is tickety-boo. Birds are winging, also singing hunky-dunky-doo. Ship-shape, tipsy-topsy, the world is zippity-zing. It's a wonderful day, hurrah, hooray! It makes me want to sing. Oh, hurrah, hooray! Oh, hooray, hurrah!
So, if there are special rooms in hell, are they better than the other rooms in hell or worse? Like, do you have to reserve like a special, and are all the rapists and murderers in one place, and then the never Trump Republicans get a kind of nice, slightly nicer room in hell? I don't, I just always wondered how that works. Why are there always special rooms in hell? It seems like you could cover that. Anyway, never mind. The Klavanless weekend has come to an end. For those of you who are listening to Another Kingdom, it wasn't quite as bad for Charles Manson. He wasn't listening. That's the way it goes. Another Kingdom is our podcast that Knowles and I are doing over at iTunes, and Ricochet. It's a fantasy thriller. We'll talk more about it when Knowles gets here. But while I was doing this, when we were doing this, I had no idea. This sounds silly, but I had no idea how to do a podcast. It's absolutely true. When you have to be the guy putting it up and getting it all together, it becomes very complicated. And Knowles and I have talked about the fact that we felt that Satan was working against us because every single thing went wrong. But I went on Skillshare, this collection of classes, online classes, that teaches you about different things. So you go on Skillshare if you want to, get a new leg up at work. You want to come in with and say, oh yeah, I know how to do that too. I didn't know how to do it before, but now I do. If you want to go off in a different tack in your career, or if you want to get a new hobby, you go on Skillshare and you can take classes. And I went on and did the podcast stuff because it really is educational. Skillshare has over 3 million members and over 17,000 classes. It's like the Netflix for online learning. You can take classes in graphic design, DSLR photography, social media marketing, digital illustration, much more. Skillshare classes are taught by industry experts and experienced professionals, perfect if you're looking to build your career or start the side career of your dreams. So, like I said, I did that. I did the podcast thing, and I did the writing one because I wanted to test it for you to make sure, was it good advice? And it was. And marketing too, which I didn't know enough about. Skillshare is giving my listeners a 1-month free trial of unlimited access to its over 17,000 classes. Go to www.skillshare.com/Andrew and you get a free month. Check it out because it really does teach you all kinds of things, even like calligraphy, crazy stuff like that, photography, things that you might not have tried before that you might learn a lot about. So I got to talk about, I'm going to talk about the sex scandals. I love the fact that Glenn Thrush, the New York Times White House reporter, is now caught up. It's women saying that he got them drunk and started mashing them and all this stuff. And the only reason I like that is because Thrush is one of the guys who was exposed in some of the WikiLeaks emails as sharing his material with the Clinton campaign. And he said, I'm just a hack. So you tell me what to write, basically. I'm a hack. And then the New York Times hired him to cover the White House, along with Maggie Haberman, who is also identified by the Clinton campaign. So the fact that he's now actually, who would have believed that a guy who declares himself a hack also had some other problems that might be a problem for them. I think he's been suspended by the Times while they investigate. But before we get to that, I have to talk about Charles Manson. Obviously, the mass murderer, cult leader who died at 83 in prison. And the reason I want to talk about it, I spent my life as a crime writer. I'm a crime novelist. I write crime novels. And I started out very early on that I wanted to write novels that had meaning, that were rich, that were visionary, that had a vision, included a vision, and weren't just about who killed who and what action scene and all that. I wanted to do all that stuff so you would get so wrapped up in the story, and it would only be later as you were kind of coming back out of the story that you would start to think, yeah, there was also a kind of rich idea of what life is like. And if you're listening to Another Kingdom, you'll see it's not just a story about like ogres and monsters and murder. It's also a story that presents a vision of the world. It's not just political, it's also personal and religious and all kinds of things. But it's all kind of wrapped up in the story. And as I was looking at Charles Manson's story, reminding myself of what it was, it came to me like a crime novel, and I started to realize, this was in some ways a meaningful story. I mean, Manson was just a complete loser from the beginning. I mean, in some ways, if you could have pity for somebody who did so much evil, you would have to have pity for him. He was the bastard child of a prostitute. When he was born, this is kind of awful. It's kind of heartbreaking. On his birth certificate, it said No Name Maddox. That was his name, No Name Maddox, because nobody knew who his father was. Nobody knew, he's just this hooker basically gave birth to him. Obviously, I think he was sexually abused. Obviously, he was psychopathic. He was in the system so much. He was in prison so much of his life, even before the murders and everything, that he begged them to keep him in prison. He said he didn't know how to live outside of prison. He wished they would keep him, but they didn't send him out. And then, I don't know how else to put this, Manson got his big break, and his big break was the 60s. And in the 60s, people don't remember now how things fell apart. They see the hippies, they see Woodstock, but they don't remember that the very fabric of American life kind of deteriorated in certain segments of society. In certain segments of society, if you looked at it, it was still going on as if it were still the 50s, but certain segments of society, college campuses, places where young people gathered, the underground artistic life, they really came apart at the seams. It's hard, it's hard to tell you what it was like to live through some of that as a little kid, or really, I was a teenager. I shouldn't say a little kid. That, when I was a kid, we had a health class, and it was taught by Miss Rose from Florida. I'm sure she's passed away by now, but like Miss Rose was like a nice Southern lady who came in, and she came in. This was her first year, and she came in to teach us about health. It was called health, but it was really sex ed. That's what it was. And so she would come in, and she would teach us how to be proper ladies and gentlemen. And meanwhile, things had so fallen apart. And I grew up in a very pleasant, nice suburb. Things had so fallen apart that I was sitting next to a girl I was sleeping with. Another girl right down the row had an abortion. Guys were taking drugs. Everybody was screwing everybody else. I mean, and if you had asked us a year before, we would have told you that we would be virgins when we were married. I mean, that's how fast it fell apart. It was really like if you'd been talking, yeah, I think it would be the right thing to do and we weren't religious or anything. It was just the way everybody sort of felt, maybe you'd have a fling with a bad girl or something like that, and then you'd get married. That was kind of the way you thought. And the next year, like I was 15, you were sleeping with nice girls, and everybody was doing it. It was just what was being done. So it was a complete unraveling. If it was unraveling where I was in a fairly staid, well put together suburbs, just think of what was happening in other places. Now, Manson wanted to be a singer-songwriter. That was kind of the dream he had. And by chance, he kind of bumped into Dennis Wilson of the Beach Boys. And the Beach Boys actually recorded one of his songs, which was just awful. It's just a terrible, terrible song. But I don't think they released it until after he became famous with the murder. I played just a little bit of it. It was just terrible.
Come say you love me.
What's that?
Give up your world. Come on, be with me. I'm your kind, and I see. Come on. You are the pretty girl. My life is yours, and you can have my world. I'm your kind, and I see. Never had a lesson I ever learned, and I know I could never learn not to love you. Come in now closer. Come in closer, closer, closer.
All right. I'm sorry we let that go on so long. It's called something like Never Learn Not to Love or something like this. But, the other thing I want to point out about this, about the 60s, of course, is it's also hard for people now who didn't live through it to understand that we thought, even I, for about 6 months, although I was so cynical even as a kid that I didn't really buy into it, but people thought that a new world had come upon us, a new paradise. There was not going to be any war. It was going to be the age of Aquarius. We're all going to love one another, the sexual freedom. And a lot of times people say, oh, it was the pill. The pill brought all this sexual freedom. But that's only half true. The idea of sexual freedom has been in the Western consciousness from the beginning. The idea that marriage is prison, the idea that marriage strangles the soul and our sexual lives should be free. That's been with us for hundreds and hundreds of years. The pill just made it more possible that you would, that you could sleep with somebody and she wouldn't get immediately pregnant. That was the only big difference there. So, yeah. It's funny. I'm thinking about Forrest Gump. If you've seen the film Forrest Gump is about the idea that America has this essentially stupid decency that goes through all these changes in life and sort of passes. Forrest Gump kind of represents an America that is stupid but also smart. It's stupid but virtuous, and this virtue is its smartness. And yet, I can't help but thinking that Forrest Gump passes through that picture in some ways with his virtue unscathed, but I'm not sure that is what happened to America. Anyway, so Manson fell in with Dennis Wilson and the Beach Boys, and they recorded some of the songs and all this, and there was also a producer, Terry Melcher, but Melcher refused to give Manson a record contract. So Manson is now in California, and he sets up this cult, and what's fascinating about this cult, okay, is that it's largely white middle-class girls who come and become like his sex slaves. And it's these girls who are, some of them well brought up, or at least from nice homes, who knows what they had gone through. But a lot of them, it was the drugs. You started taking. Did anything good come out of that culture? I remember being told, "Oh man, if you want to be a writer, you have to take LSD." And I kept thinking, like, it's not making sense to me. If you want to be a writer, your brain is all you got. Why would I take something that's going to turn it to glue? And I never did. I smoked a little dope. We all smoked dope, but I must have smoked dope like 5 times. And I thought, like, it's boring, But everybody was pushing LSD on you, mushrooms, cocaine, all that stuff, and I just kind of stayed away from it. But nothing good came out of it. So a lot of these women they started taking drugs, they started taking hallucinogens, and Manson manipulated them, and he would have sex with all of them, and he would tell them who they could have sex with, and he would tell them when they could have sex, and he developed this cult that was largely based on these white middle-class women. Here is one of them, Leslie Van Houten. Van Houten was one of the murderers in the Tate LaBianca murders that are the big murders that Manson was put away for. But she has received parole pending, I think, Jerry Brown's approval. I don't think she's gotten out yet. But here she is explaining to the parole board. This is an actual tape of her parole hearing. Now, and she's much older now, right? This is many, many years. It was 69 when the murders were committed. So we're talking like almost 40 years later, more than 40 years later. Here she is telling the parole board how she felt about Manson at the time.
I believe that because I believed that Manson was Jesus Christ and that it was something that had to be done. And that while it was not something that I felt good about or that it was like war, and we were going through combat training at the ranch and really prepped like that.
And your belief system led you to believe that someone who was Jesus Christ would instigate racial wars between blacks and whites?
Yeah, he said that it was the blacks' turn, that the white had been on top for too long, and all they ever did was put harm on other people that were not like them, and that the last time he came, he had been crucified, and this time he would have to make himself known.
So Manson was Jesus Christ, and he was bringing about a race war for the sake of the blacks. The blacks had been oppressed, so he had this crazy idea. He called it Helter Skelter, based on the Beatles song. And the race war was going to be called Helter Skelter, and that he had some idea that these murders were going to start this race war, which would then elevate black people, and he would be their savior. I can't help but be fascinated with the fact that women were taken in by this guy and were attracted to this guy. And we all know that when some of these sex killers and serial killers who go to prison, they get fan mail and love letters from women. There's something about them that women find, obviously not all women, some women find appealing, and this guy used that. And I just want to play a little bit of this interview with Manson, because when I look at Manson, I see like a street person. I see like a guy, I mean, just an absolute psychopath. Nothing he says makes sense. I picked this little cut because it's where the interviewer asks him if he has any remorse for the terrible, terrible things he did. And this is what he said.
From your words, as Mr. Emmons quotes them in this book, it's clear that you were guilty of murder, and yet he says in all his conversations with you, he never heard you express remorse. Have you never felt it?
Remorse for what? You people have done everything in the world to me. Doesn't that give me equal right? I can do anything I want to you people at any time I want to, because that's what you've done to me. If you spit in my face and smack me in the mouth and throw me in solitary confinement for nothing, what do you think's going to happen when I get out of here? Guilty. I wouldn't do anything that I felt guilty about.
You don't feel guilty at all?
There's no need to feel guilty. I haven't done anything I'm ashamed of. Maybe I haven't done enough. I might be ashamed of that, for not doing enough, for not giving enough, for not being more perceptive, for not being aware enough, for not understanding, for being stupid. Maybe I should have killed 400 or 500 people, then I would have felt better. Then when I felt like I really offered society something.
So, I look at a guy like that and I just see, I mean, just a guy who's ranting and raving, obviously should be in prison forever. I mean, the only reason he got off without the death penalty is the Supreme Court ruled that the death penalty was illegal in California, and so he didn't get the death penalty. He spent his life, but he kept coming up for parole with his swastika like carved into his forehead. So, I mean, at least we can have enough faith in the system that he was kept in prison his whole life. But there is something about this. There's something about the fact that this was magnetic to people, and people went for this, the people who surrounded him. He became a cult figure to these people. There was a woman who just about 2 years ago said she was going to marry him in prison, a beautiful, beautiful 25-year-old woman. Now, I should say, before I play this clip of her, I should say that there is some talk that it was all a con, that she was just trying to get possession of his body so she could use his body as a museum piece or sell, tickets to look at his body or something like this. But here she is being asked, Ashton, I don't mean to, I shouldn't laugh, but I mean, it is just the depravity of humanity is quite amazing. Her name was Ashton Burton, and Manson called her Star, and she's asked why she is marrying this guy.
Well, because I love him, and I've got half a brain that I can see that he is the one that knows what's going on. He's the one that is in the truth whenever nobody else is. And
what is it about him compared to other people you've met in your lifetime that makes him so unique and different?
Charlie always tells the truth, no matter what.
He always tells the truth. So I'm talking about this as a crime writer, a crime novelist, which is what I am. I've been most of my life. I mean, even Another Kingdom, even though it's a fantasy story, it is a crime story too. I'm talking about what this story means and what kind of vision it presents. And I'm going to get back to that in a minute. But first, let's talk about sleeping. Now, when I talk about sleeping, it's always theoretical because I haven't slept for 20 years and I'm awake. I'm awake so much. I mean, I just was thinking about this the other day. I don't live an ordinary life. I woke up this morning at 5 because I had to do an interview. Usually I wake up at 5:30 and I'm working till about 8 and I really don't stop, And even then I'm kind of doing stuff. I suddenly dawned on me that this is not a normal life, But I don't sleep a lot. I love to stay awake. So it's really, really important to me that my mattress is comfortable because I am in bed and I do read and I do a lot of stuff, lying around in bed and thinking and taking notes and all that stuff. So I want a very, very comfortable mattress. If you've ever gone out and slept and shopped for a mattress, it's not always that pleasant an experience. They're not always there to help you. That's why you should try Helix Sleep. It offers something that doesn't exist anywhere else, a mattress that is personalized to your unique preferences and sleeping styles, and it won't set you back thousands of dollars. If you go to helixsleep.com/Klavan, Klavan, you can take their simple 2 to 3 minute sleep quiz, and they'll build you a custom mattress that will be the best thing you've ever slept on. For couples, they can even personalize it with each side of the mattress feeling differently. Everyone from GQ to Cosmopolitan to the New York Times are all talking about Helix, and once you try it out, you'll know why. Your custom mattress arrives direct to your door in a week, and shipping is completely free. You can try it for 100 nights. You don't love it, they'll pick it up. They'll refund you in full. Go to helixsleep.com, HELIX, sleep.com/Klavan right now, and you'll get $50 toward your custom mattress. That's helixsleep.com/Klavan for $50 off your order. helixsleep.com/Klavan. A more comfortable way to lie awake at night or sleep if you're into sleep. I got to say goodbye to Facebook and YouTube. Come on over to thedailywire.com and you can listen to the rest of the show. You can watch the entire show right there if you just subscribe for a lousy $10 a month. A lousy $10 a month. What are you doing with it? You'd probably just, do something terrible that you'll only hurt yourself. Give us the $10. You can watch the whole show. And if you give us $100, you get a year's subscription. And by the way, that's a savings for those of you. And I know in my audience, people are going, is that more or less than $10 a month? It's $100. It's a savings of about $20. You get a whole year, plus you get the Leftist Tears tumbler, which magically fills up every time I speak.